This is Sawyer Robertson, and you're listening to the Bearcast on SicEm365.com.
Welcome into the Bearcast on SicEm365.com. Today, Colt, Barber, and I are going to discuss our Big 12 power rankings following week 2 of the season. We're going to do this kind of at a fast pace so we can get through every single team in the Big 12, starting from the very bottom, which is where you will find Oklahoma State. Not a good start to the year for Oklahoma State, and really just unfortunate, right? Because they played a really good team in week 2 in Oregon, but they got absolutely crushed 68-3. It was not a competitive game. It was not a game that I think anyone walked away from that game thinking that Oklahoma State's, changing or getting better or anything along those lines. And it was also really bad because Oregon scored all 69 of their points in the first 3 quarters of that game. So it was an absolute splattering in that one.
Yeah, and that was after playing UT Martin, and they did not look good against UT Martin. Like, I watched that game. It was one of the early games in the college football year. I think it might have been a Thursday night game. And once they lost Haas Haney at quarterback, they just struggled. And they looked bad even with him. He just made plays for them. So they scored 14 points in the first quarter of that game. And then what they've done, 3-3-7, and then they scored 3 against Oregon. And Oregon's good. They have plenty of talent, but there's a reason that they're number 16. And I hate that for Mike Gundy. I like Mike Gundy a lot. And I don't know. After last year and this year, I don't know how long he's set for Stillwater.
Doesn't look good in the NIL era, and was probably a bad week to be poking the Oregon Bear as well right before you play them. I don't know why he decided to make NIL comments the week right before he faced Oregon, but it did not go well. So moving on to number 15, this is where we have UCF, and I know UCF got a win this week over a really bad North Carolina A&T team. They beat them 68-7. They did what they were supposed to do, but good Lord, did they look terrible in the first week of the season against Jacksonville State, who is breaking in an entirely new roster. I don't think they're good. I think they're probably the worst team in the Big 12 when Oklahoma State has Haas Haney back, but that's just my view on it. I know they had a good week, but I still see them at number 15.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of points for that particular game, but did you see the comments by the NCAA coach after the game? It was like, is it worth it getting this exposure for your program? He's like, no. I lost 3 quarterbacks and gave up 600 or whatever it was. But that was not a team that needed to be playing in that game. North Carolina and A&T is not very good. I don't know a lot about UCF other than they just completely wholesale changes. Gus Malzahn's gone. Obviously leading Florida State to a pretty good offense. I know there's probably some remnants of that, was there and some of the guys that came back, but that's a real, they just restructured that roster and it's going to take a while to get them back. And I'm curious to watch them against North Carolina coming up. It kind of gives a barometer because I don't think we really know. Jacksonville State, NCAA, and T are not very good. So North Carolina's not very good, but they're a Power 4 team. Curious how they match up with them.
Yes, that will absolutely be interesting. Next on the list, and I think this kind of ends the very bottom tier of the conference with West Virginia. And listen, the team West Virginia lost to this weekend to Ohio's a pretty good team. Like, I think Ohio's going to have a pretty good year. They have a really good quarterback. But this game was not as close as the scoreboard says it was. They were outgained by nearly 200 yards, and they won the turnover battle 3-1, and they still lost this game to a mid-major team. West Virginia also got bad news that they lost Jaheim White, their star running back for the season.
Didn't see that.
It's going to be really bad for them. I do think Rich Rod will have them playing better towards the end of the year. And it's kind of similar to UCF where they actually have stability at head coach. Like, the guy's going to be back. So you might see them still fight for their coach towards the end of the year. But talent wise, just too much that West Virginia lost. I do not see that as a very good team this year, and a tough loss for them to Ohio.
Yeah. I mean, no comments. I mean, Nico Marchiol coming back, like, is a decent structure, with Jaheim White, Jaden Bray, are 3 familiar names. But I mean, that was an okay team last year, but their driving force was Garrett Green. And then the running back that went to was at Ohio State. Like, they had some guys that left that from an okay team. And yeah, I mean, this turnover in this day and age, if you change coaches, your whole class, your whole team is up for grabs. And we saw that with West Virginia and UCF. And even for a bowl team, like West Virginia made a tough decision to fire Neil Brown. They had to make that decision, and I respect them for it, but this is what you get whenever you make those changes.
Real quick, Sawyer Robertson has something to remind you about.
Want the latest information about your favorite team? Try out Sigum 365 premium content the next 3 months for just $5 by clicking the link below.
And now, back to the Bearcast. All right, at number 13, Kansas State. Oh, man. This is a team that I was completely wrong on. I think a lot of people were completely wrong on coming into the season. I didn't expect them to win the Big 12. I think I had them third or fourth. But I did expect them to be a contender, and they have not looked like a contender at all. And losing to Army, listen, I understand that Army is a challenging matchup, and they can provide a lot of challenges, and you saw it in this game. Kansas State only had 6 possessions in this game because Army shortens the game and all of that. But Army did lose to an FCS school, even though it was a good one. Tarleton's pretty good, but they still lost to an FCS school. And for the second week in a row, Kansas State's played a pretty bad team close, and they finally lost this time because they beat a bad North Dakota team last week. Something's off with this team. I hate their offense right now with Matt Wells. I think that everything's kind of gone downhill in that regard by bringing him in, and defensively, they don't look like the same team that they have been under Chris Kleiman over the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they lose their running back early in the Iowa State game, and I think that's a big part of this. In general, when I've watched them, I haven't seen a ton of team speed offensively. Avery Johnson is obviously very fast. I think Jace Brown is a pretty fast player. Jerron Bradley was hurt in their game against Army. I think he was in a sling, and that was a big piece for them in the offseason. But you want that team to be tough and physical, and the games against Army are the ones that you expect them to win. I think they played well against Iowa State, but that was a weird game in general. So, yeah, I mean, Avery Johnson got a lot of hype in the offseason about taking this next step, and I think he has that type of potential, but he needs to be running the ball a lot for this team to be its best. And right now they're not doing that. So I'm anxious to see how this goes and see how he develops throughout the season, because he could make or break them from, I don't want to say making a bowl. That would be a big swing and miss for their season. But, that's 2 weeks, 3 weeks in a row that you probably should have lost. And that's crazy to think with Kansas State with Kleiman.
They could easily be 0-3. Easily.
They probably should be. They probably should be 0-3, to be frank.
Absolutely. Moving on to number 12, we got Cincinnati. And Cincinnati played a really tough game against Nebraska and played well somewhat. I would say that if their quarterback, Brendan Sorsby, had played better, they probably would have won that game. He just did not throw the ball well against a good defense. And then this week they played Bowling Green, got the win only by 14. It wasn't a dominant performance. I still stand by this. I think as a team, they're a good team. Like, I think they could win 7-8 games just based on talent on the roster, what I view from kind of what I see from them. But I don't really like their coach. And because I don't really trust Scott Satterfield, I think this is going to be another season where they're right on the bubble of being a 5, 6, 7 team. Like, I just think that's how this is probably going to play out for them. They don't do things right in those close games. They've lost far too many close games. I think that comes down to coaching a lot of times.
Yeah. I like their defensive line. I think that part of their game could be really good. I thought after watching them against Nebraska that they would come out and run the ball well against Bowling Green, and Brendan Sorsby 7 for 40 yards and a touchdown. He should not be their leading rusher against Bowling Green. That's a red flag for me, and it kind of tells me a little bit about Nebraska as well. So I didn't watch that game, so I can't really provide context. But yeah, that's not encouraging. You shouldn't have to, against Bowling Green, you shouldn't be having to rely on Sorsby's leg and his arm to win that game.
No, absolutely not. Okay, moving on to the next team, Houston at number 11. Man, I think Houston is in the same place they were last year. They have a really good defense. Their offense is still behind. They're better than last year, but they're still behind. And I still think defensively, I'm not buying that they're as good as they were last year. I think the teams that they've played so far have not been good, have not tested them at all. And, you look at this game, I mean, it was 7-3 late in the second quarter. I mean, it was two defenses playing against each other. And I'm sorry, Rice is not good. Rice might be a bowl team, but that's about it. I don't think they're much better than that. So I haven't been impressed with Houston yet. Again, defense is good. I think they're probably a bowl team or a fringe bowl team at least, which is a nice improvement from a year ago.
Yeah. I mean, you look to 2024, Houston stole Rice's running back, but from this last year to this year, they got the Connors kid. I really like him. But they beat Rice this year 35-9. In 2024, it was 33-7. So, like, I don't know. Like that, from what I've seen from him, I don't think their offense is that good. I think Wegman has the potential; he can complete a downfield pass, but I don't think that anything about that offense scares you. I think they'll be solid defensively, but I can't justify putting them any higher than what at number 11 right now. Unless something, they lost a ton of good players off their defense too. I think that's what lost their defensive coordinator, whether they lose their offensive coordinator as well, or they made a change on the offensive coordinator. So a lot of moving pieces. Willie Fritz is a good coach, but this is kind of hard to corral right now.
It is. All right, moving on to number 10, we got Arizona, who has been a surprise to me. Now, I picked them to be 2-0 this year at the beginning of the year, so it's not really surprising that they're 2-0, but I feel like they've looked really good, and that was not something that we saw from them last year against bad competition. I don't know if it's going to last. I truly don't know if they're that good. But at least they're playing good football. Noah Fafita looks a lot better than he did a year ago, looks much more comfortable in the offense. And who knows, maybe year two for their head coach, bears something good. Maybe they're a bowl team. I could actually see that at this point based on what I've seen so far. But I can't put them higher than this because they haven't played anyone yet.
Yeah. I mean, Weber State, who they beat 48-3, got beat by James Madison 45-10. And James Madison's a solid program, but it's not a Power 4 program. They do have some guy. I think maybe Noah. I think it's Fafita. However you say his last name, Fafita, is back, and I think that probably kind of pushes them. But they lost some playmakers on offense as well. They lost, I think, a really good running back, and then the receiver, the first round draft pick. So like, how good we don't really know yet. Hawaii is a tricky game for Hawaii traveling in. Always a solid program at home. You never know what you're gonna get on the road with them. Did beat them. Arizona beat Hawaii 40-6. So yeah, we don't know. I think that this is a potential riser for the conference, and it'll be good for them to step back up to that next level. When you got them in the Big 12, you wanted them to continue that path they were on in 2023. Last year was a down year for them, so I'm anxious to see how they rebound this year.
Right. They were supposed to be really good last year, and obviously that collapsed. So we'll see kind of how they do once Big 12 play gets here. At number 9, we got Colorado. And Colorado has impressed me so far. I viewed them as kind of a sneaky 7-8 win team, actually, in the preseason. And they're kind of living up to what I thought they would be. They lost to Georgia Tech in a really close game, a game they probably feel like they should have won. They crushed Delaware, so nothing to really add from that. But I think in general, we got to see them against a decent Power 4 team, or a pretty good Power 4 team, wherever you think of Georgia Tech, and they competed. And so that gives me some confidence to think they're going to be able to compete in most of their Big 12 games.
Yeah, I mean, I think their rotation at quarterback is kind of strange. Caden Salter was kind of the guy they brought in, but then you see all these headlines about this Staub being the third quarterback and kind of, winning the job. I don't know if he won the job. I don't really know what that make of the headlines. I don't know if they were really settled on anybody, but he played well. So that's probably their biggest question mark in terms of their high end potential. But you look at their schedule at Houston, Wyoming coming up. They play BYU at home, Iowa State at home, Arizona at home, Arizona State. And then on the road, West Virginia, Utah, TCU, and Kansas State at the end of the year. So plus Houston coming up this next week. So I could see a variety of outcomes for this team depending on their quarterback situation. Kansas State at the end of the year might be a different Kansas State team, but I see some winnable games on their schedule. Dion in this year after everything they lost is kind of it's hard to predict right now.
Yeah, he's impressed me though as a coach, just with the way that their lines have played and everything like that. It's been impressive. Moving on to number 8, we got Kansas, who lost to Missouri this weekend in a game that, man, they definitely feel like they missed an opportunity. It ends up being an 11-point game, but it was, Kansas was up for a lot of that game and just withered. They just completely withered by the end of the game. I think this is a fair place to put them. They looked really good in their first 2 games and then competed against an SEC team in a rivalry game. I've been impressed with them so far. And my expectation for them was like a 6-6, 7-5 type season. I think they're definitely on track for that, if not more.
Yeah, I think the scary part is for them right now is running the football. Missouri, they really struggle. Now, Missouri, I think, is probably sneakily good on
Yeah.
defense. But with Jalen Daniels and what you expect to be a pretty good offensive line based on what they had last year, that they lost Devin Neal. It was a really good running back, but to only have 28 yards rushing in that game to me, it's still a little worrisome. Like, if for as much flack as Baylor's caught about their running game for this particular game, for them to put up 28 yards, that's a little concerning. So longevity wise, how long does Jalen Daniels hold up, and then can they run the ball? I think they kind of have those. They have a decently high ceiling to win Big 12 games because of Jalen Daniels and it being explosive, but they kind of live and die by Jalen Daniels and his health.
They absolutely do. All right, moving on to number 7, probably the most disappointing team of the week in the Big 12 was Arizona State. The defending Big 12 champs lost to Mississippi State in kind of heartbreaking fashion. And really, it just all came down to the start of the game. Arizona State did not come ready to play in that first half. They absolutely dominated the second half of this game, but allowed Mississippi State to hang in there. And then they finally got caught on another deep shot from Blake Shapen and ended up losing. I think it's pretty clear Arizona State needs Sam Leavitt to play a lot better, but their offensive and defensive lines, I still think will keep them in a lot of games in the Big 12. I still view them as a contender, but Leavitt's got to play a whole lot better than he has so far this year.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough game to go to Mississippi State and play with those stupid cowbells and doing all that stuff. Like, that's not an easy place to play. But you outrush your opponent by nearly 200 yards. That's a game you should win. Sam Leavitt, his performance is what cost them that game. You talk about Blake Shapen throwing for 279 and 3 touchdowns, but Sam Leavitt not playing to his level of expectation cost him that game. Like, if Sawyer Robertson puts up that, regardless of where they're playing, that's like Baylor fans are not thrilled. And so Sam Leavitt had high expectations and he didn't live up to them. And truly through 2 games, he hasn't. So how can he bounce back is going to tell their story for their season.
Next up on this list, we got 3 straight teams that have played absolutely nobody. So the first one is BYU, who just beat Stanford 27-3. Stanford, of course, lost to Hawaii in week 1. So not going to take too much away from that. But BYU's look good. They've played good defense. They've dominated teams at home, which they always do. They're kind of right on line with what I expected them to be this year, even without Jake Retzlaff. So I've been impressed. But again, they haven't played anybody. So don't know too much about them, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, BYU is going to be, in these games, they should win in the out of conference of you're just tougher and physical. Stanford's not good. They're old guys for the most part. And I mean, that's a built-in advantage. They've always had it. So, yeah, we don't know a lot about them. East Carolina would be an interesting challenge because they're going to East Carolina, but then at Colorado, West Virginia, and at Arizona the next 3. So we'll learn a lot about them and their, are they potentially as good without Jake Retzlaff as they were last year? I find that hard to believe, but maybe they are. You never know with BYU. I mean, BYU is truly a wild card every year.
They really are, and they're just so good at home. It just makes them so consistent and tough if they're winning every game at home. So it'll be interesting to see if they can continue that going forward. At number 5, we got TCU, who's only played 1 game, and it was a throttling of North Carolina, 48-14. I could have told myself to put them higher on this list. I think we could have done that because they won so convincingly against a Power 4 team. But my main takeaway from that game was I think North Carolina might be just really, really bad. And so I don't want to read too much into it. Again, I think putting TCU inside the top 5 is a must. I think they showed enough in that game to be inside the top 5. But we'll know more about them in 2 weeks when they play SMU. I think we'll find out kind of exactly who they are after they beat Abilene Christian this week.
Yeah, North Carolina put up nothing against TCU's defense and then put up almost right at 300 yards against Charlotte, who's 0-2 now. So we don't really know about North Carolina. And TCU looked good, but with that scheme offensively and what they have coming back on defense, if North Carolina is not good, that's what TCU should have done North Carolina. So we don't really know about that. About them, and North Carolina's in a complete rebuild mode, and I'm anxious to see TCU because I think core-wise, offensively, they're going to be good with that scheme. Like, that's just reality. It's can they run the ball consistently, which they showed that against North Carolina, but how good is that? What does that truly mean? And then defensively, can that defense become disruptive and consistent? They were disruptive last year, but not consistent. So I'm anxious to see TCU as they kind of move forward with their schedule. But yeah, I think that you could justify putting them higher because they have a Power 4 win, but we don't really know enough about North Carolina.
Next up at number 4, we have Texas Tech, the big spenders of this offseason, and they have just absolutely crushed 2 just awful teams, Arkansas Pine Bluff and Kent State. I saw a video of Kent State's center snapping the football, and the ball didn't go anywhere. It literally just fumbled all over the ground. It was it looked like middle school.
I haven't
football.
seen it, but I'm like, I'm envisioning this.
It was incredible. He snapped it and it rolled literally right next to his right ankle, and he was blocking as if it was a good snap. I mean, it was incredible stuff. Tech has just not played anybody. And this week, I know Tech fans are probably saying, "Oh yeah, Oregon State, big matchup coming up." Yeah, Oregon State lost to Fresno State, who Kansas beat by like 30.
Yeah,
it's not going to be competitive. They're going to win another game by 40 some points, probably, or 30 some points. It's not going to be close. And then they're going to roll into Utah, and we're actually going to get to know who they are. I think that's what's going to happen, and I'm very curious about it. But Tech's done exactly what they're supposed to do, so I can't put them much lower than this. They've looked dominant.
The only thing that I can really say, and I didn't watch this game between Arkansas, Pine Bluff, and Central Arkansas. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see that one. But Central Arkansas beat Arkansas Pine Bluff 41-17, and so that kind of gives you an idea of what they faced so far. And then obviously with Kent State, which I'm about to pull this up to see what Kent State's 1-1, and their one win came over Merrimack 21-17. So we don't really know. Tech has plenty of talent. We've heard about it all offseason. How good are they going to be? Are they better than an Auburn team that Baylor faced? Are they better than an SMU team that Baylor faced? I don't know. Baylor doesn't play this year. Tech doesn't have to play TCU or Baylor this year. Yeah, that's a huge win in of itself because both of those teams would have challenged them so much defensively. So,
but I hate
long conversation about
Big
Tech.
12.
Yeah, that's kind of silly.
Those games should always happen.
Yeah, that should easily be happening, and it would have been a lot of fun too. I mean, that would have been. Tech coming back to Waco for this particular game. Baylor played there last year and won. It's kind of been going back and forth, but we can spend a whole podcast on Tech. It's a fascinating case study. Truly, how much better can you be by spending on a lot of dudes that other people wanted in 1 year? So Utah's going to be a massive test for them.
It will be. At number 3, the Baylor Bears. I can't put them higher than this because the defense has looked so bad. It's 131st out of 133 teams in the FBS. But they've also been challenged more than probably anyone in the country with their first 2 games. I can't think of anyone that's been challenged more than them with a game against Auburn and then a road game against SMU. They lost one. They won one. I think that in the Big 12, just kind of looking in the Big 12 and taking a step back, they have the best win in the Big 12 so far. A road win over SMU is the best win that the Big 12 has right now in the non-conference. Yeah. And they have the best loss that I think you could possibly have. I mean, Auburn, I think just watching Auburn and seeing what they did this past week, I know they played a bad Ball State team, but Kelly Ford has a graphic of how bad did you get beat? And Auburn's was double the size of the second closest team. They just dominated, and they dominated Baylor too in a lot of ways, but Baylor also competed in that game. So Baylor deserves to be inside that top 3 right now. We'll see how things play out, but they've had to face a gauntlet of a schedule, and I think Auburn's actually going to be really good.
Yeah, I mean, we've discussed this plenty about Baylor and where they fall. I mean, you can justify pretty much anywhere from the top half of the conference. You can make cases for everybody to be higher or lower, I feel like. But Baylor specifically, 1, we don't know how good Auburn is, and 2, we don't know how good SMU is ultimately going to be. I think more research into SMU, probably better than I thought they might be earlier in the season. I think they had some more pieces that returning, like completely whiffed on their right tackle returning, has a couple of edge players that were decent, but we're going to find more about Auburn. But I thought Auburn's win and the way Jackson Arnold didn't even run the football was very efficient passing against Ball State. That, I don't even remember which game it was. It was the Sam Leavitt game. It's Jackson Arnold going in and playing and throwing the football the way he did what he was supposed to do against an opponent he should have done it against. And that's encouraging for the outlook for Auburn, but also helps Baylor to say maybe that win wasn't as bad as people thought if they go in and are just kind of running at will and throwing at will on everybody.
Yep. Moving on to number 2, we got Utah. The UCLA win, they completely crushed UCLA. UCLA is not good, but they smashed them in week 1 on the road. It was an impressive win. They turned right around and got another dominant win against an FCS team. And so they look really good. I think their offense line, defense line gives me a lot of hope that they're going to have a really good season. I think they have a balanced team now because of Devin Dampier. I think he gives them something. Something pretty special actually at quarterback with his athleticism. The question will come just, when they're not able to run the football and actually get challenged up front, which who knows how many teams can do that in the Big 12 because their offensive line is legitimately awesome. But if they get challenged, then what happens? Do they have the playmakers at wide receiver, and do they have the quarterback that can make enough throws to win them those games? That's my question, but they definitely deserve to be inside the top 2 in my eyes at this point.
Yeah, 2-0, play at Wyoming coming up. I don't know anything about Wyoming, but I wouldn't want to play at Wyoming. I mean, we just seen that the last few years, just Wyoming winning some games, having enough talent. But yeah, their big matchup, like Tech, is coming up against Tech. And Tech's big games against Utah. I mean, that's the first one we're really going to know. Like it's not like UCLA's floundering and they have this, completely new system. They just weren't very good in that game. Is it because of Utah? Hard to know. Then UCLA, what'd you say, who they lose to? I know who they lost. UNLV. So UNLV is not bad, but they're also not what they were a couple of years ago. They had a lot of change, obviously, with their coach going to Purdue. So Utah, Whittingham's the reason for me that they're number 2. Like, you trust them to have a pretty good defense with Scally, and that system has been so good for so long. And so a lot of reason people picked them to win the Big 12 this year is because of his longevity at Utah. And if they have something on offense, that's all they were missing last year. And they're missing a quarterback to go make plays for them. And now they have that. So I'm really anxious to see Utah against a team like Tech. And unfortunately, Baylor has to play them too, but they do get them in Waco.
And finally, at number 1, Iowa State. And I think Iowa State is more than deserving of this top spot. They had to play in Ireland the first game of the year, which is a disaster. I wouldn't wish that on anyone to have to go play that game the first game of the year. They won an ugly game against K-State. Then they turned around, destroyed what I think is going to be a good FCS team. So take that for whatever it's worth. And then they came out and they beat Iowa, and they beat them by more than the scoreboard said. They won by 3, but they gutted it out in a rivalry game, in a game that they haven't won in Ames since 2011. They got they got the monkey off their back. So I think they've looked like the best team so far. We'll see how that translates throughout the course of the season, but I think they've been the most balanced and most complete team based on their resume up to this point.
Yeah, I mean, they won 11 games last year. I mean, that started this off. You beat Kansas State. I don't think Kansas State's, we talked about, they're not as good as we expected them to be. Well, time will tell on Iowa. We know what Iowa does well. This is a matchup that is honestly favorable for both of them. They kind of play their same styles. But yeah, I mean, wins like that, Kansas State and Iowa, you talk about Baylor's resume. The only way Baylor's resume is better is if they beat Auburn in comparison to what Iowa just did. Because I think in a lot of ways, Iowa and Auburn are comparable in programs, right? Like, I think obviously Auburn has a lot more talent skill-wise, but they're just kind of stable programs. They're going to go in, and Iowa State got that win over Iowa. So, yeah, I mean, justified completely to have them at number 1, and Matt Campbell does a great job there. How long does that sustain as they start getting tested by more prevalent offenses? We'll see, but right now they absolutely deserve the top spot.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch because their playmakers still haven't kind of risen to the occasion yet at receiver, and that might cost them if they get into some of these shootouts in Big 12 play. But that's it for today. That's the Big 12 power rankings following week 2 of the Big 12 season. We'll be back next week to discuss more Big 12 along with numerous other things Baylor related as well. But thanks for listening today. This has been the Bearcast on SicEm365.com.
Join Sikkim 365 Premium on a $1 for 1 month trial to read our experts' notes and insights. Know about high school commits, off-season transfers, coaching staff changes, and so much more before the rest. Also, download the Sikkim 365 app on your iPhone today to get instant notifications of breaking news, read up on the latest inside info, easily interact with other Baylor fans on our forums, and get alerts for anything published by your favorite staff members.